Okay, so here's what I come up with in terms of design. And yes, I spent way too long doing this mock-up of the SCAMP in its almost entirety. Made all the bulkheads, the planks, and the deck, and the rudder. The rudder even moves as the joint. The tiller goes up and down. I think I spent far too long doing that. But hey, I have this mock-up of the SCAMP. Maybe I can use it for other things. I haven't quite finished it. I got up to the mast trunk and I was like, you crazy, what are you doing? Anyway, here's the part we're concerned about. Here at the back we have the outboard well assembly as I've designed it. And I can just remove a bunch of things here so we can see what it looks like. So it's pretty basic. There's just this sort of tube here, and this goes all the way through down to the water. So here you can see how it fits in with the bulkhead. I made it match up with bulkhead 7 here. I wanted sort of that strength, I suppose, and I wanted it to be as small as possible so it didn't take up too much space in the boat, but it still needed to clear everything else. It goes through the cockpit sole, and when it hits the bottom you can see that these walls here, they're sitting on top of the bottom here. It's actually bearing down on the bottom surface, and I think that should make it stronger. The hole in the cockpit sole is 9mm larger all around than the hole in the bottom. And I wanted to make this hole as small as possible while still fitting the outboard through. It's 160 by 220, I believe. The outboard clamps onto this part here. For strength, that's 3 layers. I have this here, which essentially extends bulkhead 7 here. And you can see all these are single 9mm sheet, except here at the front there's actually 3 layers, 27mm in total. So we have this front piece, which is just a normal part of the well tunnel, I guess. And then we have this piece at the front, which is an extension of bulkhead 7. And then we have this piece, which is essentially doubling bulkhead 7 all the way along. I wanted to make sure that we had enough rigidity and strength here so that the motor didn't cause any undue stress on anything. So we should have a nice chunky bit here to grip upon, and the top just caps it all off. And the reason I did this whole mock-up was because I wanted to make sure that the motor would fit in and wouldn't hit anything. So I found this picture of the outboard motor from the manual, and I've scaled it through measurements that I took from the motor, so it should be pretty spot on. So this picture is attached to a Fusion canvas, and so we can sort of pan around and see how it fits here. It is sticking a fair amount down in the water. I would have liked it to be a little bit further up, but that is the reason why I mocked everything up. So you can see here, if we re-enable the rudder assembly, the tiller here is really a constraint. The tiller needs to come over the top of the motor, so this has to be down as far as possible, but still want it to be as high as possible because the water line is here, more or less. You know, I want as much vertical space between the top of the outboard well and the water line as possible, just so water doesn't potentially come in if the boat is in heavy seas. But of course, everything still had to be low enough so that the tiller didn't hit the top of the motor. And so this is the compromise that I came up with. It's a convenient height because the top of the outboard well assembly here comes right up under these thwart supports that I have. So we can get a really strong connection here when gluing it up. I could have raised it slightly higher, but then I would have had to either put a notch in here or not have this top bit going all the way to the edge, and I feel like it just would have been weaker. Now what I haven't got in this design right now is that I will be cutting a hole here and a hole here for some inspection ports, because there's just a bunch of space in here which would otherwise just be empty, so I can use them for storage of stuff related to the motor. So that's the design, and I think it will work. Either way, I've got this lovely mock-up here. I haven't modeled all the cleats that I will have to glue all this stuff. So there'll be a cleat running along here, here, and probably one along here, and there'll be a cleat along here, and the same on the other side, so that when I put the top on, it will just sort of glue straight down. And when I glue up the rest of it, I can just do fillets like standard, chuck on there, there, around here, etc. And I'll also wrap this thing in fiberglass on the outside and the inside, especially this bit in here. Is that the inside or is it the outside? It's the bit on the outside world, but I guess it's the inside of the tunnel because this will be exposed to the ocean and water, etc. I've decided not to do anything about these scuppers that I made. I'll just leave them as they were, and there'll be a slight dip here, so whatevs. And if you remember, I actually had two little holes here and one here for some little cockpit drains, which didn't really work well, so I covered them up. I will just remove those blank outs and then fill those in with wooden epoxy, just so they're all gone. So yeah, that's how she's gonna all look. Now I just have to do all the rest of the things.